A millionaire made a bet to marry the first woman who walked into the luxury hotel. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this from? And if you love love stories full of emotion and twists, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and motivates us to bring even more heart-touching stories. The soft clinking of fine cutlery and crystal glasses blended with the dull murmur of the elite gathered in the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Grand Hotel in Miami. It was one of those nights when everything seemed designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers casting golden lights, women in tight, sparkling gowns, men in dark suits and faces sculpted by surgeries and status. At the center of it all, Dylan Whitmore swirled his whiskey glass with visible boredom, an only child and heir to the most luxurious hotel chain on the East Coast. Dylan was the kind of man who knew the value of everything, except people. Tall, athletic, his eyes a stormy grey-blue like the sea before a tempest, light brown hair styled too casually for the formality of the event. Everything about him exuded self-confidence and a certain bored disdain for the life he led. "Dylan, you need to get married soon," teased Brandon, his childhood friend, between a laugh and a sip of champagne, "or your father's going to pick someone for you. How about a European, a socialite? Or that senator's daughter?" Dylan snorted. "Marriage is just another contract. A ring on your finger doesn't fill the soul's emptiness." "Then prove it," challenged another voice, this time female. Madison, his ex-girlfriend, blonde, cold, and venomous. She stepped forward with an ironic smile painted on her dark red lips. "Bet that you can marry any woman, even a stranger." He raised an eyebrow, looking around at the group. Everyone's eyes were on him, like a silent arena awaiting blood. Pride spoke louder than caution. "Fine," Dylan said, lifting his glass. "Here's my bet. I'll marry the first woman who walks into this hotel tonight." A moment of silence fell over the group, followed by mocking laughter and applause. "You're serious?" Brandon asked. "Mark it down. It's on record," Madison said, pulling out her phone to capture the moment. "Dylan Whitmore, king of hotels, is going to marry the first woman who steps through that door." Dylan smiled at the corner of his mouth, confident that nothing would actually come of it. It was just another game, a whim to pass the time. Then the revolving door of the lobby started to turn. Outside, Camila Rojas finished adjusting her crisp white blouse. She was exhausted after 2 back-to-back shifts at the small hotel where she worked, but an emergency called her to this grand Whitmore Grand, where she had to cover for a colleague who'd fallen ill. Camila possessed a beauty that defied standards and trends. Light-skinned, with straight black hair flowing down her back like ebony waterfall, her hazel green eyes shining steady, yet sad. Her figure was naturally sculpted, feminine curves that didn't need effort to stand out, even in her simple cleaning uniform. Every movement she made was delicate, yet determined, as someone who'd endured much and learned not to bow. She stepped into the lobby with hurried steps, unaware that in that moment she was crossing an invisible line between anonymity and chaos. In the ballroom, Dylan stopped laughing. The air seemed to freeze in everyone's lungs. "She's the one," Madison said in a provocative tone. "Time to make good on that bet, Dylan." Dylan looked at Camila as if he'd seen something that didn't belong in that world. Not because of her simplicity, but because of the silent strength she carried in her eyes, even without knowing she was being watched as part of a cruel game. "She has no idea," he murmured, but the game was already in motion. And now, destiny no longer belonged to bets. Camila, oblivious to the gazes, headed for the service elevator. To her, it was just another night, another floor to clean, another silence to endure. For Dylan, it was the start of something he could never control. The lobby door turned slowly, and the soft hum of the air conditioning mixed with the click of Camila Rojas's heels on the polished marble. The chandelier's light reflected off her sleek black hair, cascading down her back like a live silk. The navy cleaning uniform lightly traced her curves, revealing more than it concealed. Even without makeup or jewelry, there was something in her that made time slow down. A silent magnetism, a presence that didn't ask for permission but didn't cry out for attention either. Dylan froze. The laughter on his lips vanished. It was as if the game had stopped being a joke and turned into a warning. "You're kidding," murmured Brandon, watching the woman stride confidently across the lobby, oblivious to the eyes on her. "She's an employee?" Madison asked with a sharp laugh. "This is getting even more interesting." Dylan didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Camila, as if she had broken an invisible code. There was a woman who didn't belong to that world of appearances, and yet she carried a real, almost unsettling beauty. Camila clutched the strap of her bag tightly. Her supervisor's voice still echoed in her head. "I need you to come now. It's an emergency. I'll pay you overtime." She needed that money. Her mother's hospital bill was overdue, and rent had been late for 2 days. "Excuse me," she said to the front desk guard, her voice soft yet firm. "I'm here to cover the night shift. Camila Rojas, cleaning department." The guard nodded and let her through. She headed to the service elevator, unaware that dozens of eyes were following her, not because of her uniform, but because of a cruel bet made minutes earlier. "Still going to keep your word, Dylan?" Madison teased, her smile poisonous. "Or have you already regretted playing with fate?" He didn't answer. Something tightened in his chest, a strange, almost uncomfortable feeling. Brandon picked up his phone, still laughing, and recorded a short video of the moment. The caption would come later. "Is the Whitmore heir really marrying the cleaning lady?" Far from there, inside the elevator, Camila was taking deep breaths. The mirror reflected her exhaustion, her eyes marked by sleepless nights, but also the light she always carried, the light of someone who never allowed herself to break, despite life's weight. When she stepped out onto the service floor, she had no idea that in that instant, her life had entered a game she never asked to play. That, unknowingly, she had been chosen by a man who knew nothing about love, but was about to learn. And, as Dylan watched her disappear from view, something inside him wavered. What was supposed to be a joke now felt like a mistake, or maybe a challenge he didn't yet understand the price of. But the video was already saved. Madison's laugh was already echoing across social media, and Camila's fate was about to be thrown into the heart of a storm without her even knowing. The elevator doors closed slowly behind Camila, carrying with it the muffled sound of gears and the faint scent of industrial lavender that always lingered in the service hallways. She walked with determined steps, still wearing the radio at her waist and her badge swinging over her chest. She had no time to lose. Room 905 needed urgent cleaning before the next guest arrived. From the top of the ballroom, leaning against a marble column with his glass nearly empty, Dylan stood still, eyes fixed on the elevator, now only showing changing numbers. Brandon was still laughing. Madison was sending voice messages to a group of friends. But Dylan heard none of it. For the first time in a long while, he didn't find it funny. "Are you really going to pretend that didn't get to you?" Brandon nudged, noticing the unease on his friend's face. "If it were just another random woman, you'd already have gone after her with your textbook charm." Dylan slowly looked up. There was no quick comeback for that jab. Later that night, as the ballroom began to empty, he walked to the front desk and requested access to the staff area. He used his owner's badge from the hotel chain. Said he wanted to inspect procedures, a cold but functional excuse. In the service corridors, the vibe was entirely different. Harsh white lights, silence broken by static-filled radios, and the hurried pace of people invisible to the luxury guests. Camila was on her knees in room 905's bathroom, carefully cleaning the floor around the toilet, her long hair tied back with a plain band, gloves on her hands. Even in such a humble task, there was dignity in her movements. She was exhausted, but her eyes didn't show bitterness, only focus. Dylan stopped at the doorway. He stood there for a few seconds, watching unnoticed. For the first time, he felt something he couldn't name. This woman wasn't like the others. She didn't smile at him, didn't flatter him, didn't ask for anything. And there, kneeling in a regular hotel room, was more strength and beauty than he'd seen at any millionaire party. "Have you worked here long?" he finally asked, breaking the silence with a low voice. Camila turned around, surprised, her face lightly sweaty and hair slightly messy from rushing. Still, there was something irresistible about her natural expression. "Since I was 19. Do you need anything, sir?" she said, standing and adjusting her blouse over her pants. "Dylan! You can call me Dylan." She hesitated. She was used to being ignored, not approached by men in expensive suits who looked like they walked out of magazine covers. "Camila," she replied simply. "If it's about the room, I'm almost done. Actually, I was just passing by. Wanted to see if you needed anything." Camila frowned. No one had ever asked her that, not here, and certainly not someone like him. "I just need to finish my work and go home. That's all," she said, unaware of the impact her words had. Dylan forced a smile, but inside he felt a strange discomfort. The woman picked for a ridiculous bet didn't fit into any of the games he knew. "Do you always speak with such confidence?" he asked, almost playfully. "Only when I need to remind myself of my worth," she replied, picking up the bucket of water. He watched her as she walked down the hallway, not looking back. Camila had no idea what had been said about her that night. She didn't know her name was already being joked about in the ballroom's back channels. She just wanted to finish her shift and make it home before 2 a.m. But for Dylan, the joke was starting to weigh like lead. He stood frozen at the door, staring into the silence of the empty room. For the first time, he hesitated. For the first time, he felt ashamed. But the video was already in the wrong hands, and the consequences were about to spiral out of his control. The next day, the sun hadn't even risen when Camila walked through the back door of the modest hotel where she usually worked. The smell of old coffee and bleach filled the small employee locker room. Her hands were swollen from the effort of the night before, and her phone buzzed non-stop with payment reminders. With every missed call from the clinic where her mother was hospitalized, her stomach twisted. She was just about to tie up her hair when she got the call that would change everything. "Camila Rojas?" said a male voice, formal but soft. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Robert, assistant to Mr. Dylan Whitmore. He'd like to speak with you. Can you come to the penthouse at the Whitmore Grand today at 10? She hesitated. The name sounded like a warning. What did that rich man, heir to a hotel empire, want with a cleaning employee? Still, she said yes. Hours later, now in clean clothes, her hair down, and a wary expression, Camila rode up in the panoramic elevator of the Whitmore Grand. For the first time, she wasn't headed to the basement. Dylan was waiting with his hands in the pockets of his dress pants, staring out at Miami through the glass walls. The sky was overcast, and the sea looked just as restless as he felt. When she entered the silent room, her presence shifted the air. "Thanks for coming," he said, turning around slowly. Camila crossed her arms, guarded. "Do you always invite staff to meetings in penthouses?" He gave a slight smile. "No, you're the first." She didn't respond, just waited. "I have a project," he began, circling the room. "The public image of the Whitmore brand has been a little stiff, detached from real people. I'm creating a campaign to humanize the brand, show that we care about everyone, not just millionaires." Camila raised an eyebrow, clearly doubtful. "And what does that have to do with me?" "I want to hire you as a companion for a few social events, dinners, charity galas, press conferences, as a symbol of this new phase. Someone real, strong, An everyday woman who represents what truly matters. She looked at him like he'd just insulted her. So, you want to use me as a display, as a trophy for your own guilt disguised as goodwill, she said firmly. That's not it. He tried to explain, but she was already standing. Sorry, Mr. Whitmore, I clean rooms, not cover up intentions. She left the room without looking back, leaving Dylan more shaken than he expected. But that night, Camila couldn't sleep. The hospital called again. Her mother's treatment was behind. And the next day, the eviction notice arrived in the mail, printed in cold, unnegotiable letters. She was running out of time. 2 nights later, with red eyes from exhaustion and pride bleeding in her chest, Camila returned to the hotel. About that temporary job, she said, facing Dylan with what dignity she had left. Is it still on? He didn't reply with words, just nodded seriously. No jokes, no smiles. He knew she was saying yes out of necessity, and that changed everything. The first events were uncomfortable. Even in rented dresses and light makeup, Camila felt out of place. The judgmental stares, the snide whispers, the hidden laughs. But she held her head high, always. Dylan, on the other hand, began to see her differently. There was something in her that disarmed him. The way she spoke with certainty, how she met eyes without fear, how she talked about her mother, the neighborhood she grew up in, the Mexican food of her childhood, the dreams she never had time to chase. One night, after a charity event, the two sat alone in the car, parked in front of the simple building where she lived. "Why'd you agree, in the end?" he asked, eyes on her. She took a deep breath. "Because my mum is sick, because the world doesn't stop when you're tired, and because sometimes dignity has to walk hand in hand with need." Dylan didn't reply. He just looked at her for a long moment, as if something inside him had flipped upside down. Camila got out of the car without saying anything else, but he stayed there, staring at the dark building, heart heavy and throat dry. What started as a game was becoming dangerous, and he knew. He was starting to fall for someone who deserved the truth, but he also knew that when she found out what was behind that proposal, there'd be no going back. Time moved strangely fast in the weeks that followed. Camila was no longer just a discreet presence at Dylan's side at Miami's elite events. She had become an elegant mystery, someone who sparked curiosity in every room she entered. It wasn't the dress, always simple, hastily rented by Robert, nor the jewelry, which she didn't even wear. It was the way she looked, how she stood firm, how she spoke little, but every word carried more weight than whole speeches. That night, the Whitmore Foundation's charity gala filled the hotel's main halls. Journalists, politicians, and business people moved under the glow of giant chandeliers, holding glasses of sparkling wine and rehearsed smiles. Dylan stood at the center of it all, as always, but something about him had changed. He wasn't trying to impress. His eyes searched for only one person, and then Camila walked in. The dress was navy blue, long, made of light fabric that fit her body with subtlety and grace. Her black hair was down, straight as silk, flowing down her back. Minimal makeup, barely noticeable. She didn't need anything more. The whole ballroom seemed to pause for a moment. Dylan saw her before anyone else. His eyes locked onto her like she was the only real thing in a room built on appearances. "You look beautiful," he said, approaching with a look unlike any he'd worn before. There was no game in it, just something raw, sincere. Camila lowered her eyes for a second, unable to hide a small smile. "Thanks. I think it was the only dress left in my size on the rack." He chuckled softly, but the tension between them was palpable. For the first time, they didn't feel like boss and employee, or millionaire and hired date. They were just two human beings trying to understand what was growing between them. The event went on, but Dylan barely greeted anyone. His eyes kept returning to her. Camila also seemed less distant, more open. They talked about books they never had time to finish, about old music and childhood memories. She spoke of her mother, the smell of cinnamon coffee at home, days when there was only rice and eggs on the plate, but always laughter. Dylan listened intently, his eyes welling with something even he didn't recognize. Later, on the hotel's rooftop under the soft lights of the hanging garden, the two stepped away from the party. Camila leaned her arms on the glass railing, looking out at the dark sea in the distance. The night breeze moved her hair as if the world conspired in silence. "You don't seem like the same man who made me that offer at the start," she said without turning. "Maybe I met someone who made me want to change," Dylan replied with rare honesty. She finally looked at him. There was a glow in her eyes, a mix of doubt and hope. "But you're still hiding something, aren't you?" she murmured. Dylan held his breath. He was going to say it, almost did. But the fear of losing her kept him silent. Instead of words, it was his gesture that spoke. He stepped closer, heart racing, as if crossing a line. Gently placed, his hand on the side of her face, and pulled her in carefully. Camila didn't pull away. Her eyes closed the moment their lips touched. The kiss was slow, deep. There was no spectacle, no audience, just truth. But not even she knew that the kiss wasn't part of the plan, and he didn't know that it was already too late to hide what needed to be revealed. In the ballroom on the other side of the hotel, Madison was showing the video of the bet to a digital influencer. She laughed with disdain. The file was being sent, and in a few minutes, the world would know the truth. As Camila and Dylan walked away, hands intertwined and hearts confused, time ran like an invisible enemy, and the storm was coming. The next morning, the sun had yet to warm the city when Camila woke up. The night before felt like a dream. She still felt the heat of Dylan's kiss on her lips, and for the first time in a long while, she had slept without thinking about bills, work, or past pain. She allowed herself a soft smile as she looked at the ceiling of the modest room she shared with her mother. She set water on the stove for coffee and sat on the couch to wait. She picked up her phone to check messages from her sister, who had sent some old family photos. As she opened the app, a notification for a widely shared video caught her attention. The title was provocative, but it didn't prepare her for what she was about to see. She clicked. The shaky footage showed Dylan, sharply dressed, surrounded by laughing friends. Madison's voice rang clear in the background. "So it's settled. The Whitmore heir is going to marry the first woman who walks through that door?" The video trembled as the camera turned toward the lobby. And there she was, Camila, rushing in, wearing her navy blue uniform, bag over her shoulder. The caption on the screen read, "Is the millionaire really going to marry the cleaning lady?" Camila froze. The world around her went silent. The kettle whistled, but she didn't hear it. Her hands shook so much the phone slipped and fell to the floor. "No, this can't be," she whispered, barely audible. She picked up the phone, eyes wide, breath shallow like the air had become too thick to breathe. She opened the comments. There were hundreds. "He deserves an Oscar." That maid knew how to play the game. Real love or marketing stunt? How far will a woman go for money? She thought it was love. Camilla's chest tightened, her stomach turned. The images of the kiss from the night before came rushing back, but now they felt like a cruel trick, a performance, sweet poison. She jumped to her feet. The cup fell from the table and shattered on the floor. Her mother, still in bed, called out weakly, "Camila, everything okay out there?" She didn't respond. She was leaving. She had to get away. She needed to breathe far from that name, that lie. She dressed in a hurry, grabbed a backpack with a few clothes and documents, and left without looking back. Her tearful eyes met the harsh daylight like a punch. The streets seemed to mock her, Billboards, newspapers on stands, whispers on corners, everyone knew. She walked fast with no clear direction. In her chest was anger, shame, humiliation, and a hollow only felt by those betrayed by their own heart. At the hotel office, Dylan was typing on his laptop, preparing a new campaign proposal, when Robert burst in with his phone in hand. "Mr. Whitmore, this is spreading like wildfire." He looked at the video. The color drained from his face. "Who posted this?" "Madison. And the worst part, it's already been shared by dozens of gossip pages." Dylan jumped up. "Did Camila see it?" he asked, his voice already cracking. "We can't reach her. She's not answering. She's gone." Dylan rushed to his car. He called non-stop. No answer. Her last message, sent hours before, still sat there. "You made me believe." He knew he had lost more than a bet. He had lost the only person who saw him beyond the money, the only one who looked at him without interest, and because of that, had meant everything. On the sidewalk, Camila boarded a bus with no clear destination, her eyes fixed on the window, the blue dress still folded inside her backpack, her heart in pieces, but her head held high. She didn't want to hear excuses or explanations. "He used me," she whispered. Her voice choked as the bus pulled away from the city. She just wanted to disappear. And maybe this time there was no going back. The bus rolled along concrete roads until it left the heart of Miami and entered the suburbs, forgotten by the spotlight. Camila rested her forehead on the cold window glass, watching the rusted warehouses, empty gas stations, and houses with time-worn roofs. Each mile took her farther from public shame, but not from the pain. Hours later, she stepped off in front of a small, unpaved street, where the lampposts shook when the wind blew. It was the same neighborhood where she'd grown up, simple, filled with the smell of fresh-cooked food and neighbors who knew every child's name. As she opened the rusty metal gate, she saw her younger sister sweeping the sidewalk. "Camila," she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I came back home," she replied, voice weak and face pale. Her mother, still recovering, was lying on the couch in the small living room, painted with faded colors. When she saw her daughter, she tried to sit up. "No, Mom, stay there. I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay." Camila spent the following days caring for her mother with tenderness and silence. She washed clothes, cooked rice and beans, gave the injections on time, and read brochures from the community college like someone trying to rebuild a life from scratch. In that neighborhood, no one judged her, but everyone knew the videos had reached there too. The neighbor next door made a pitying comment. The market owner smiled a little too forced. Even far away, shame chased her. At night, she cried quietly. Into her pillow, her phone turned off. She ignored unknown calls, ignored Dylan. Across the city, Dylan was falling apart. Since the day Camila disappeared, he hadn't been the same. He missed important meetings, declined interviews, cancelled appearances. The hotel board began to pressure him. But he didn't care. He spent hours locked in the penthouse apartment. No lights on, no music, no one around. His shirt always wrinkled, his eyes sunken and red. He was no longer the man who once walked through ballrooms with an automatic smile and a glass in hand. Robert, his assistant, watched him with concern. "You need to pull yourself together, Dylan," he said one day, placing a tray of coffee on the table. "You're throwing away everything you built." Dylan stood up, his hair a mess, his beard unshaven. He stared at his reflection in the living room mirror. "Everything I built never meant anything, because I lost the only thing that was real." He tried calling Camila dozens of times, sent flowers, wrote letters. Nothing reached her. He even went to the neighborhood where she lived but didn't get out of the car. He saw her from a distance, leaving a pharmacy with bags in hand, her hair blowing in the wind. She smiled at her mother, who was walking with her, with a love so pure it hurt to witness. Dylan felt small, powerless. For the first time, money couldn't buy access. The Whitmore name didn't open doors. The whole world might know who he was, but Camila, she had locked him out with a silence louder than any scandal. In the modest room at home, Camila taped the acceptance letter from the night nursing program at the public university to the wall. "If I can't erase the past," she whispered to herself, "then I'll build a new future." And even with her heart still broken, there was a spark in her eyes, a light in someone who had fallen from a cruel height but refused to stay on the ground. Meanwhile, Dylan watched from the car, hand pressed against the steering wheel, eyes lost. He understood now. Camila was never part of a game. She was the only truth he had in life, and maybe the only one he'd never have again. Almost 6 months had passed since the last time Dylan heard Camila's voice. Her absence echoed constantly through his life, filling every space where vanity once lived. He had tried to move on, or at least pretend to, but the walls of his world had lost their shine. Money had no taste anymore, parties had no music, and the Whitmore name no longer carried pride, only silence. It was a grey morning in Miami when he was called to an important press conference. The room was full of reporters, investors, TV cameras, and influencers. The media expected an announcement about a new international resort. The partners expected numbers, projections, and carefully crafted smiles. But Dylan had no more space for masks. He wore a dark, elegant suit, as always, but there was something different about his demeanor. His eyes were slightly red. The bags under them betrayed sleepless nights. He stepped up to the microphones, took a deep breath, and faced the crowd. "Before any announcement, I need to speak as a man, not as a businessman, not as an heir, as someone who made a mistake," whispers started immediately. The cameras adjusted their focus. "Months ago, on a night like any other, I did something cowardly. I played with the value of a life. I made a stupid bet, surrounded by people who cheer for dirty games as if they're charming." Dylan paused, looking directly into one of the cameras. The woman who walked into that hotel wasn't part of a plan. She was dignified, strong, beautiful, hard-working, and I turned her into a spectacle. I exposed her image, her feelings, and her trust to ridicule, all for vanity. The room fell into absolute silence. No more smiles, just wide eyes and phones recording every word. I fell in love with her when it was already too late. When they had already destroyed the purest thing between us. Dylan swallowed hard. The weight of the confession finally found its way out. Camila Rojas taught me more than any university or executive ever did. She taught me what respect means, what dignity means, and what real love is. Some journalists watched with misty eyes. Others just listened, stunned. That's why today I'm announcing that part of my inheritance will be used to create the Raíces Project, a fund dedicated to providing scholarships and housing for young women who, like Camila, fight every day with courage and dignity, but without any help from the system. He paused for a long breath, then concluded, eyes fixed on the central camera. "Camila, if you ever hear this, know that I don't expect your forgiveness, but I needed the whole world to know that you are not a bet. You are the woman who changed my life." Flashbulbs exploded. Headlines began spreading like digital wildfire. Whitmore hair admits bet and apologizes live on national TV. Dylan launches $1 million fund in honor of ex-cleaning lady, but Camila wasn't there. That same morning, she was serving soup at a community center, wearing a white lab coat and a scarf in her hair. Her mother now walked better, smiled more. Life was slowly finding its rhythm again, even with the scars. She received the video in the college group chat, sent by a classmate who barely knew her full story. Camila watched in silence, seated in the back of the break room. Her heart clenched with every word, and tears welled up against her will, but she didn't say anything. She simply turned off the phone, put it away carefully, and went back to serving another bowl. She still wasn't ready to go back. But something inside her had started to move. The evening brought a warm breeze as Camila returned home, feet tired after another day of volunteer work at the neighborhood health clinic. Her lab coat hung over her arm, stained discreetly with medicine. Her hair was tied in a simple bun, revealing a clean, tired, but peaceful face. Her mother slept on the couch with the TV playing softly in the background, and the smell of freshly made rice still lingered in the air. When she opened the mailbox, she noticed a different envelope. It was white, with no logo. Her name written by hand in firm, careful script. Camila hesitated. For a second, her heart clenched, as if it already knew. She took the envelope to her room, shut the door gently, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. There was no logo, no rehearsed speech, just raw, sincere words filled with silent pain. Camila, I don't know if you'll read this to the end, but I had to try. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness because I've learned that apologies don't fix everything. They don't erase what was said. They don't undo what was done. I just want you to know that I understand. I've understood that love isn't about conquering, impressing, or winning. Love is when you want someone to be okay, even if that means being far from you, even if they never look you in the eyes again. I played with your story. I was a coward. But you were the only person who saw who I really was, even when I couldn't. I watched the video of the press conference dozens of times after. And I realized it means nothing to say you love someone if your actions don't reflect that truth. So now I'm doing what you've always done, trying to serve others with what I can, with what I have left. I love you, Camila, but I'll love you in silence if that's what brings you peace. I won't seek you out again. I won't invade your peace. I just needed you to know that you changed my life. Thank you for existing, even if just for a short time. Dylan. Camila read slowly, each line like a whisper straight to her heart. When she reached the end, her hands slowly lowered. The tears came without rush, warm, silent. She cried not just from pain, but from something that still beat inside her. Something she had tried to bury, something that, despite everything, had survived. The letter rested on her chest for a few minutes. She lay back and closed her eyes. He finally understood, she murmured, her voice choked. In that moment, for the first time, she didn't feel anger or humiliation. She felt truth. She felt his soul laid bare on the page, without arrogance, without armor. And that's what disarmed her. She still didn't know if she was ready to forgive, but for the first time, she wanted to consider it. Outside, the sky began to darken, streaked with shades of lilac and gold. A new chapter was beginning, not with promises, but with space, with time, with the kind of love that doesn't demand but waits. And Camila, still with her face wet, knew something inside her had changed forever. The next morning, Camila woke up with her eyes still swollen from the night's tears. Dylan's letter remained carefully folded on the dresser, like a sacred piece, not because of the paper itself, but because of what it carried: truth, pain, and something she reluctantly recognized: love. A few days passed. She didn't reply right away. She needed to process it. She needed to be sure her decision came from the soul, not from a passing loneliness. Only when she felt her silence was no longer a form of escape, but a conscious choice, did she grab her phone and type a single message: "We can talk." But no promises. The meeting was set at a quiet cafe, far from the public eye. She arrived first, wore a simple white blouse and jeans, no makeup. Still the same Camila, but with a different look, stronger, more whole. Dylan walked in a few minutes later, and the moment he saw her, he paused, as if the world had begun to make sense again. He wore a light blue shirt and casual pants, no armor of expensive suits. He looked visibly nervous. "Hi," he said, approaching cautiously. "Hi, Dylan," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. They sat in silence for a few seconds. The sound of the espresso machine and soft background chatter filled the gap between words. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't come to hear apologies. I already read everything I needed to in that letter," she stated, looking him directly in the eyes. "If we're here, it's because I believe regret can turn into action. But I don't want words. I want actions. I want time. And above all, respect." Dylan nodded, eyes misty. "You'll have that, even if I have to spend my whole life proving it." From that day forward, everything changed. It wasn't like the movies. No soft soundtrack, no eternal embrace in the rain. It was real, intense, human. Dylan began to visit her little by little, never alerting the press, never trying to impress. He brought hot coffee after her shifts, helped with tasks at the community center, or simply sat beside her in silence, just to be close. Camila, in turn, held her boundaries. There was no rush. She wanted to see if this new Dylan would last, or if he was just guilt dressed up. Over time, she saw the change not in grand gestures, but in the small ones, in how he listened to her, spoke less and felt more, how he carried boxes, washed dishes, and learned the names of the neighborhood kids. One afternoon, sitting on a park bench with their hands almost touching, she looked at him with calm but intense eyes. "Do you still love the Camila who wore a cleaning uniform? I love the woman who never had to change who she was to. Show me who I needed to become." That's when she allowed their fingers to intertwine, not from impulse, but from choice. From building, they began seeing each other more often. No cameras, no flashes, just two hearts trying patiently to heal the cracks that had once separated them. This time, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was real love. With flaws, with fears, with history, but it was love, at last, the kind that survives scandal, silence, and even pride. 2 years had passed since the day Camila and Dylan looked each other in the eyes again as equals. 2 years of quiet rebuilding, of wrongs made right with action, not flowers, of love nurtured as if on solid ground after a storm. On that sunny spring morning, Camila walked through the halls of the community college with her white coat over her arm and her diploma in hand. The auditorium still echoed with applause, but she was already outside, beneath a flowering tree, eyes teary. Her mother waited with a simple bouquet and a proud smile. "You did it, my daughter," she whispered, hugging her tightly. Camila closed her eyes, letting herself feel the weight of the victory. After so much humiliation, sacrifice, and sleepless nights, there she was, graduated, head held high. Not just because she succeeded, but because she did so without bowing to anyone. Dylan arrived quietly, as always. He carried a small envelope. Inside, a heart-shaped keychain with the symbol of the Raíces Project, the care center he'd founded months earlier, inspired by her. She smiled when she saw it. "Is this your way of showing you're doing your homework?" "It's not homework," he replied seriously. "It's part of my life now." In the 2 years following his public fall, Dylan had turned his inheritance into something with purpose. He sold off an entire wing of one of the family hotels and converted it into housing for women escaping domestic violence. He added training rooms, daycare spaces, and clinics. No golden nameplates, no signatures on the walls. "I want them to walk in and see a safe space," he said at the opening. "Not another empire." The media, of course, covered it all. But Camila stayed in the background, away from the spotlight. That part of the story was theirs. Months after graduation, they gathered friends and family in a community garden, surrounded by fruit trees and string lanterns. There were no hired photographers, no celebrity guests, just children's laughter, the smell of homemade food, and people who were truly part of the journey. Camilla wore a cream dress made of light fabric, without any glitter. Her hair was down, softly curled by the breeze. Dylan waited at the altar, built from reclaimed wood and decorated with flowers planted by the women of the center. As she walked down the aisle between the chairs, she saw familiar faces. The neighbor who lent her the first college book, the nurse who gave her an internship, the shelter volunteers, all there for her, for them. During their vows, Dylan held her hands like holding a sacred promise. "I don't promise perfection," he said, voice shaky, "but I promise to keep learning from you every day, because you taught me that love isn't about conquering. It's about giving." Camilla took a deep breath before responding. "And I don't promise to forget what we were, but I choose, with an open heart, to build what we are, because the love that's worth it doesn't come from luxury, it comes from truth." The kiss was sealed under the applause of those present. No fireworks, no drones, just the certainty that their union was made of flesh, soul, and healing. The video of the bet, once viral, now sat forgotten in a social media archive. The internet had found new stories, but the real world, the one that mattered, knew what had truly happened. Camilla showed everyone, and especially Dylan, that real love isn't measured by empty promises or built on games. Love is born where there is respect, grows where there is truth, and blooms where someone has the courage to change. So, what did you think of this story? Leave a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments so we know how much it moved you. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share it with someone special, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories like this one. And before you go, I've picked out another touching story that will move your heart even more. Click on the screen now and let yourself feel the next one.